serious, what was your high school's tragedy? We had a secretary that everybody loved. She knew almost everyone's name. She got cancer. She defeated it and fell pregnant. When the cancer came back, she had to decide whether she wanted to keep the child or abort and do the cancer treatment. She chose to keep the baby and died 3 months after giving birth. The school organized buses and excused students from lessons, so everyone was able to go to her funeral. There were so many people there. We didn't fit into the building and there weren't enough candles to light. She was such a nice and cheerful person and supported me through some really hard times. I still cry when I think about her being gone. There was a girl in the year above me. She was raped and murdered during school hours. She finished her exam and had one more before graduating and decided to take a walk in the forest as it was a hot day. The guy spotted her and bludgeoned her to death. Years ago our high school had a French class. They planned a trip to France. The plane crashed in the ocean before they got there. There's a memorial garden and angel statue for the students, faculty and chaperones. Guy killed himself. Everyone was kinda shocked. Apparently he told everyone, including school faculty, that he was gonna do it and no one did shit. Apparently his dad was beating him up at home. That wasn't the big thing about it though, but that his girlfriend made a whole scene when it happened. Even tough, the school gave her a few weeks to stay at home and recover. The very next day she was in class. She was in my class so I got to see it all. She came in with a t-shirt with a photo of him saying never forget. Would break down into tears randomly and loudly during class, disrupting it. The principal kept insisting her to go home and take a break, but the next day she was back and would do this again. Then like 1 month later she's dating this other guy who was his best friend. Acted like she never knew the dead dude. Soon after found out she was pregnant and told everyone the baby was dead dude's and started the drama again. Her whole pregnancy was a attention grabbing fest. Baby is born and it's black. She was white. Dead dude was white. Know who's black? Dead dude's best friend. She dropped out to try to hide it, but it's a tiny town. Everyone found out. Turns out she was cheating on him with his best friend for months and it was one of the reasons to push him to the edge. Really, it was crazy from beginning to start. Back in high school we knew this girl. She wasn't vastly popular or anything, but she was always around. Anyways, she was diagnosed with blood cancer and the whole school found out about it. We had a whole Facebook page with friendly letters and pictures and so on. A few months pass and we all get the message that she has successfully beaten cancer. The whole school was happy for her, with word of mouth spreading her triumphant victory of beating cancer quicker by the day. Then, literally 2 days passed when she died from a heart attack due to a side effect from the medication she was taking. The whole high school was just miserable. A pregnant girl got attacked at lunch by another girl. She was thrown to the ground and the girl stomped her stomach. She lost the child. 2 seniors died in 3 days of totally unrelated causes 2 months before graduation. They were the best friends of a guy that rode the same bus as me and I was sitting right behind him when he got the call about the second one. I've never heard someone scream like that before or since. How'd they die? One died in a car crash. This was on a Monday. Unbeknownst to everyone, number 2 had already smoked a blunt laced with some nasty synthetic sheet the previous night. Seized out and went into a coma. Everyone assumed that he didn't come in Tuesday or Wednesday because he was grieving. Until his family broke the news of his death Wednesday afternoon. There was a guy who went to my school that was accused of rape in sophomore year, but the charges didn't stick, and after being gone for a while he came back. Everyone agreed that he didn't seem right in the head, but when he was acquitted people really went off on his accuser and she switched schools. We graduated and he walked with us. A year later he was convicted for raping 2 girls and a guy on different occasions with the help of an accomplice. He licked the back of my neck in class one time. Girl got decapitated on her birthday in a car crash. We averaged a death a year. When I was a sophomore, one of the most popular girls in class died in a house fire over Christmas vacation. She had almost gotten out of the house, but went back in for her cat. When I was in high school, the school was in danger of being shut down and turned into charter schools. A lot of the teachers and students were protesting and going to officials. It was going well. During this time it was found out that a guy had raped a girl in one of the stairwells. It wasn't given press, and I'm pretty sure my school settled it with the parents to not give the school more bad press. 3 seniors got hit by a car. One has a scar on her face for life and another was in a coma. The other girl who was in my dance troupe died. A boy had a birthday, and his friend's dad was a pilot and offered to take him and his friends, 3 kids total, flying through the mountains. They left and never came back. It took search and rescue about 3 days to find them. Everyone hoped that they had just had to make an emergency landing and we're still alive. The plane had crashed. All 3 kids and the dad were dead. Engine had suffered some sort of catastrophic failure, and he couldn't level the plane out in time. Our entire school was so tense waiting for news. It came during my lunch period. There were 2 lunch periods for different grades. The kids were pretty popular, and they had siblings at the school too. The teachers got the news and then shared it with students. I remember seeing kids bursting out of classrooms in tears. No class did anything for the rest of the day, and most of the rest of the week. Friend of mine drowned. My old high school has a class specifically for special needs students. Some of them were mostly self-sufficient and just needed help dealing with complex situations. Others would be dependent on someone else their entire life. From my understanding is that a guy was friends with one of the girls in that class and her parents trusted him enough to make sure she didn't get hurt during a sports event on the weekend at the building. It wasn't the first time he's done this, but apparently that night when he took her to use the bathroom he went in and raped her. I was told afterwards is that he took her home, and she wasn't able to understand what had happened to her. Her parents probably found something on her that indicated what happened and she was taken to the hospital. That guy should be in prison. But I personally don't know who either of them were or what happened afterwards. I hope she doesn't remember what happened. And her parents probably don't trust anyone to be around her now. Note: I found this all out after the school made an announcement about what happened to her, anonymously. And they want us all to keep an eye out for each other to make sure it doesn't happen again. A guy murdered a girl like 1 week before prom. Spurred on by his GF. Small school to maybe 80 people in my year, so everyone knew everyone. Well, for the past 10 years or so there's been a really high incidence of students committing suicide by parking their car on the train tracks near the high school. It's not consistent, but every few years one person will do it, followed by a couple more. Coach started teaching math, science and history, making sure his athletes get good grades and depriving us of an education. A boy committed suicide after intense bullying, and the school didn't step in to help him. His parents knew he was suicidal but thought he would feel the love. The horrible part is even after he died, the school still did nothing for people who were being bullied. Now the only thing I can imagine is how they say how it could have been prevented but decided nah. A really nice kid committed suicide. This kid was loved by everyone he met pretty much. Just an all around warm hearted guy. He hung himself, and rumor that I heard was a gang was trying to force him into joining but he didn't want to. So to spare his family any potential harm, he just killed himself. In the 90s, we had a project prom. A school organized event with the idea that students would go there instead of parties, and it would keep them safe. A girl died at hot top filter caught onto her leg, and the suction held her underwater. At the time, this is over 20 years ago, there wasn't a law that the emergency shutoff had to be nearby. It was fairly big news. The New York Times did a story. nighttimes.com. Our principal, who was the nicest man I have ever known, passed away from lung cancer last Monday. The sad thing is he made sure none of the students knew about it. In my school we had a really sweet chaplain, basically a school minister, who was awesome and would give us candy and told us we mattered. One day he just disappeared for a few days. We didn't know what was happening. I heard from the teachers that he had to leave temporarily for personal reasons. We had an announcement eventually saying that his wife had just died and he was arranging her funeral. He came to school every day with a smile on his face while the love of his life was suffering of cancer. He was the same old guy when he came back. Obviously still sad. The light behind his eyes was gone. But we were so confused why he never told us. I think I heard that he didn't want us to feel sorry for him and concentrate on our own lives and bettering ourselves or something like that. The guy who sat next to me in my math class hung himself. We had never talked to each other and I didn't even know his name, but he seemed happy and had lots of friends in that class. I heard that someone had killed themselves and couldn't put a face to the name until I walked into that class and saw the tears on faces in the empty seat next to mine. A girl in the year above me had failed her exams that were important for what qualifications she would need to get into her desired course at university and hung herself. We got assemblies and talks for weeks about it and the subject of failing exams and that there is always something you can do to make things better, right? My high school is infamous in my city for the yearly tragedies. The biggest one was a kid we knew got in a fight with some other guy over a girl. Some random kid everyone knew was kind of odd and had nothing to do with the fight just jumped in and stabbed the kid in the lung. I was in class just below the incident and from what I heard from the people who actually saw what happened, he bled to death gasping for oxygen and was dead when the paramedics showed up. Worst part is everybody blamed the girl in question and the dude who stabbed the kid ended up getting acquitted. For the whole school, it would have been when our friend killed himself. No one expected it or saw it coming and it completely changed things. For personal high school tragedy, it would have been when my mom's addiction hit its peak. We started the year with 20 students. One was forced by her parents to drop out to work. One is in a mental hospital for severe depression. One is in another hospital for anorexia and I'm afraid she won't survive the end of the school year. My French teacher made a burnout. I come half of the time because of anxiety and depression. We are currently 16.5 students. I think this class is cursed or SMTHG. 2 girls were in a car accident, each had very serious injuries but both survived. One was in the hospital for a while and had to learn how to walk again. Skiing accident. Every year the student council organizes a skiing trip, very normal in Denmark. This poor guy hits himself with his ski and suffers a open skull fracture. Newer makes it down the mountain. A few girls went missing from a neighboring school district. Wrestling coach murdered them and chopped up their bodies to attempt to conceal the crime. Hanged himself in the interrogation room. We had quite a few deaths in my school. One kid died on prom weekend that my sister knew, not friends or anything, she just knew of him. My boyfriend's ex-friend committed suicide. Rumors say it was an accident and they school was trying to say it was on purpose. I was too sad to go to any of the meetings and her funeral as I was the reason my boyfriend and her broke it off, but she and I were still okay before she died. The worst I saw though was this girl who was an advocate for organ donations. Specifically for lungs, as she herself needed a double lung transplant because of cancer when she was a baby. She was a very sweet girl and when I met her she had an oxygen tank she carried around to help her breathe. Her family and our school held so many fundraisers to donate to her cause. And the rest of the town got engaged with it too. A year after she came to school, she heard she was getting a lung. We all held fundraisers in the school out of the goodness of our hearts to pay for a hotel for her family to stay in. We were in a town an hour or so away from Toronto and that's where the sick kids hospital is. Her transplant was a success. We all cheered. But of course she still had rehab to go through. We got videos of her learning to walk again, thanking us, asking for cookie recipes for Christmas. I sent one. And then we got terrible news. Her cancer returned and she was not able to leave the hospital. When it was announced, we all said a prayer and the school was silent for a good 2 minutes because no one knew what to say. It was even worse when she died on New Year's Day. The whole town and neighboring towns lit green lights and hung green ribbons, which some are still around to this day 5 years later. I've since moved and graduated, so I don't know if they're still working with the family and her boyfriend for the cause for other patients. Last I heard they were, but they weren't as outward anymore since she died. I only got to talk to her once, but I think about her from time to time. 3 kids playing basketball. 2 of them start exchanging insults. One takes it too far and shoots his counterpart. The other kid gets away. Kid died. Other kid goes to jail with the hatred of his childhood friends and everyone he ever knew. 13 years old. Tried as a minor. He was to be released in 2009. I didn't know any of them beyond their names from sitting in the same classrooms sometimes. I moved eventually, so I DK whatever happened. If the survivor got his revenge like he told everyone he would, violence begets violence. One of our best teachers died of cancer. After he seemed to be getting better. Everyone knew him, as his dad used to be the principal and the man had basically been coming there since he was born. Went to high school at our school. Did his internship there. And began teaching there. He helped with plenty of after school activities, and even after his diagnosis he kept showing up to help with events. Needless to say, everyone was upset when we heard he passed. I remember him telling us about his interests, traveling all over the world to play big organs and building model trains that drove on tracks all around his house and yard, and everyone being genuinely interested. Even outside class time. Rest in peace. Friends. You really were something special. One of the guys I went to school with and used to perform with in drama and music was the youngest British soldier held in Afghanistan. He was 18 at the time it happened. He was such a great guy too. Heroin hit my school hard senior year. One very popular artistic kid started using. He went from golden boy to that kid everyone avoided within months. He graduated but didn't attend the ceremony. The next morning, 2 kids riding bikes in a wooded area found him hanging from a tree. Cops determined his time of death to be around the time of the grad ceremony. He'd left a note at his dad's house before headed out to commit suicide. It made the local rounds as his brother had a copy of it made. Was one of the saddest things I've ever read, and so eloquently stated. He wrote that he already knew he was addicted to heroin beyond the point of return. About how he went from beloved to his peers and family to being viewed as a subhuman disappointment. Wrote about feeling as though heroin was the only love he had in his life anymore, and that he'd rather not live than be in love with needles and Drew Gus. The note was published in a book about addiction. Trying to find it to link here. Rest in peace. Pat. You were a good dude who just made one bad choice. I still have the ceramic little version of Prince that you made me in art class sophomore year. It's a prized possession and makes me think of you every time I see it. A freshman student, when I was a senior, was held by his father. He attempted a murder suicide of his entire family. But the youngest, a girl less than 2, survived. Last I knew, this was 16 years ago, she had been severely brain damaged. I don't know how long past the initial incident she survived. This was in middle school. One of my classmates died in their sleep. We don't know how they died, but it was likely due to asthma. 2 sophomore girls burned the high school down. They videotaped it doing impressions of the Heath Ledger Joker and posted it to MySpace. One of my friend's older brother committed suicide. Not long after he did too. It was ducking rough. I had graduated at that point and came home and saw friends I haven't seen since elementary. I hugged one of my favorite teachers and cried in his arms. Later, I found the beauty in reconnecting with old friends and teachers that I quite possibly will never see again, and laughed through tears reminiscing memories and hearing new stories.